So they'll be seeing us. Just quick rule for today's session. Again, as always, to not mention any private information, whether you are a client asking a question or one of our attorneys. And with that, we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining today's H-1B webinar presented by Online Visas and Velie Global Law Firm. We have here some wonderful attorneys and non-attorneys, including myself. If you have questions, please shoot them our way in the chat and I'll read them on your behalf. And with that, I'll hand it over to Attorney Jon Velie.
Thanks, Pierre. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. Looks like we got a great crowd today. See some familiar faces, see some new faces. Love that. I guess the news of the day broke yesterday, and that's that the registrations for the lottery have been extended from today at noon Eastern to the 25th at noon Eastern. So looks like lawyers have lost their weekend, and clients had delayed to get their information to us. We'll get to give it to us, and maybe we can get some more folks in there. Would like to throw it out why anybody thinks, I have my own suspicions, why they extended it. Does anybody out there have a feeling of why they extended it a couple more days? Jump in and start talking, whatever you feel on it.
Well, John, they said it was because of system outages. The system sinks.
Right. Yeah, not surprising about that. That's a good point, Elizabeth. Anybody else have an opinion on why immigration extended it from the 23rd to the 25th? Well, my thought might go ahead. I would love to hear somebody else's.
Maybe lower turnout than they were expecting.
Yeah, that's what I was
thinking. Could be
thinking.
due to system outages, but also could be due to
recent
issues.
Let's just think about this thing historically. So last year we had 800,000 registrants, highest ever, which doubled the year before's 400,000 registrants, which was the highest ever, which doubled the year before's 200,000 registrants. And then what did we have? We had a filing of H-1Bs, and after the first wave of the 85,000 that were available for the whole thing, 77,000 weren't claimed, right? So we had this massive highest registration ever and a very, very low actual filing. So then they change it, right, in which it's going to be, you get one chance per beneficiary. Doesn't matter how many people register for you, one chance. So if you register once, one chance. If you register 80 times, one chance, right? So I guess that means less people than what they thought must have registered is what I'm thinking. Ashley, I'm not discounting what your opinion is, Elizabeth. I think you're right as well. And maybe it wasn't working and maybe there's mistakes. We don't know this. We'll know later. So it's always interesting at this point to try to guess what is happening with immigration, especially when they
Hello.
change. Yes, hello.
My name is Alam Khan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Alam?
Thank you. I'm good.
Just wanted to say hello. Or do you have an opinion on the registrations?
Yeah, because I didn't get time. Yeah, I saw because now I'm in London. That's why I was busy on my job.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for coming, Alam. We're having a discussion with the attorneys and some non-attorneys about the H-1B season. It's a webinar. We probably have a couple hundred people on here today, so really appreciate you jumping in. Let's talk a little bit about what we expect to happen next. So registrations are in. Anybody having a feeling of when we'll hear about when the H's will be selected? Any discussion points on that?
I'm telling people a week to 10 days.
That's about what last year was, wasn't it? It was into April, but pretty early into April. They had I was surprised on how quick it came out last year. And Elizabeth, as we know, this changes every single year. The lottery itself isn't the way they've run is only about 3 years old, and they've never run it the same way twice. And so let's hope they are as efficient this year as they were as last year to tell us. So then what happens after that, Elizabeth? How long do we have to file H's once we get our notification?
Well, I'm telling everyone file before June 1st. I
File
think
before
that's a
June
safe
1st.
window.
Oh, that's a safe window, right? Okay, so that's a different question I was asking, but it's a good one. A good answer, right? So that is helpful hint. So they're going to give us 90 days, so that would be the end of June. So what Elizabeth Ricci is saying to her clients is, let us apply before June 1st. Love that advice. In our world, it's been pretty interesting historically. Very few, if any, of our clients have come through in April, which is frustrating. So then that gives us 60 days. Then we get some in May, and we get a whole lot of them in June. And it's created some interesting elements of managing clients and expectations and stuff like that, because everybody wants to have the same people talking to them. But if you have all of your clients coming to us within 30 days to try to get an H-1B, which takes at the fastest ever, probably about 10 to 14 days, because you have to, get the LCA certified, right? Which may take 7 to 10 days. And then you file it. And then sometimes LCAs have problems. Some of the problems we've seen are with the Federal Employment Identification Number. The FEIN number doesn't match, right? And when the FEIN number doesn't match, what happens? You don't get your LCA. You don't get your LCA, you can't file your H-1B. So Elizabeth's suggestion to give yourself 30 extra days is a brilliant one. Why? Part of the problem we don't get them all the time is that in last year's, hopefully this will be solved this year. So last year's, the beneficiaries were going to as many petitioners as they could get to register them for the H-1B, which is completely lawful and completely permissible. It just says, like, you can go and interview with as many companies you want for a job. You don't have to pick one employer. That's not how this works. So they were worried. They're worried because it's such a small percentage of people can get applied. I think something around 13 to 15% of the people that registered last year were selected, right? So you've spent your time getting your college degree. Maybe you've applied for the H-1B a couple of times. You've had to go get an advanced degree, all sorts of nightmarish stories of people getting turned down. So they do this. And then what would happen, they'd get a few of these different options, and then they would start negotiating, right? So our 90 days starts ticking on how long we get to apply for these visas, but our potential clients or our actual corporate clients or even our beneficiary clients haven't decided which company they're going to go to. So that delayed it. And then other companies are like, well, what projects are we going to put them on? Or what work do we have for them? All those sort of things were coming into the equation. So I love the rule, Elizabeth, to get it in a month early. And I hope every one of our clients does that. But I think we're going to still see the majority of our clients coming to us within that last 30 days, which is really, really tough on our team. So we want to do everything we can ahead of that. Okay, so what else? Anybody else that know what's going to be new this year that wasn't there last year? Elizabeth, you and I talked about this last time. So anybody else out there, any other attorneys have any feelings about what's going to be different in filing H-1Bs this year? I'm not going to call on anybody, so I'll throw up the conversation. You guys can do it. So one of the things is going to be the online filing of H-1Bs, online filing. Elizabeth and I talked about it last time. She's like, no way am I doing that thing. If it breaks down, I'm not going to lose a case over it. We are, great users of technology. We developed visas.ai, a platform that builds visas, right? So it builds visas for us. So we love it because we're going to take our visa that we built on our platform and we're going to drop it in their system. At least that's the plan. But we have to test it. We have to train it while our team is increasing to meet the needs of our more clientele for this time. So it's tricky, right, Elizabeth? I think you have a wise way of going with what you know. We're going to give it a shot, and we'll keep doing these webinars, and we'll tell you what we find. We'll tell you whether or not it's working. We'll tell you whether it's not working, or why it's not working, or hassles with it. But we're going to give it a go, and we're going to use our platform to build our visas, and we're going to use that product that we build out of it to not only share with our clients what we have, but to then take that and drop it into the new online system, and hopefully it works. So
can I ask you a question? So John, they're not letting you bundle, right? The family with the new electronic. Is that right?
Well, you
So
know, honestly, Elizabeth, I don't know what they're going to allow us to do or not do. We're looking at that. So that, yeah, don't assume I know anything, especially since something that hadn't happened yet. So what you're telling me is that if you file an H-1B, H-4s have to be filed separately.
that's my understanding, and and it's my understanding. Correct me, Ashley, or any of you if I'm wrong.
Hmm.
If you can't file for family, so do you get the receipt for the, assuming you got selected?
Yeah.
You get the receipt for the principal that you filed electronically, and then you file the paper for everybody else. Is that how it's going to work?
Well, I don't know. We'll have to look at it, right? I mean, so can you file and in state that there is another related case, even if there's not a receipt number, which would be the question there, right? So that's worthy of noting, and we'll I'm going to write that down, and we'll talk about that as we're testing the system to see what works there. So that's a good point, Elizabeth, and everybody else. If and we'll look into that. It appears, according to
Oh,
Elizabeth,
yes, just joined us, by the way.
you can't file related visas, H-1B visas online together. Okay. And what we don't know, because we haven't tested it through this yet, is, can we bundle all of it together? I'm assuming we can't, right? So what we're going to do is package up the entire thing. We write briefs. We would then have affiliated documents like whether an expert analysis on their educational evaluations, or, if we're arguing these are similar cases to the industry, we might have some want ads. If we're arguing that it's the degrees related to other positions we've had in our company before, we would have resumes and those sorts of things, all the different things, the educational components, the offer letters, if we're saying that they are asking for an extension or a change of status, we'd obviously have all the documents around to, how they're getting paid up until the time we filed. All those sort of things would go into the package, and hopefully we'll be able to take that part and parcel and give it to immigration online. That's what our plan is. That's what we're going to start testing, and we'll share that knowledge with you as time goes on. I heard you, Pierre, say that Yesh was here. Yesh, you have any insight on H-1B filings? We've just talked about the extended registration period. We have talked about the Elizabeth has told us about that you can't file families or the H-4s together, which the H-1B is online. You have to do them separately. Had some questions about that. But what are some of the things you're thinking about that we should be on the lookout for in filing H-1Bs this year?
I think you guys covered it. I'm sorry, I came in a little late. Trying to think what else was a hot topic, hot button topic. Yeah, the H-4s you can't file, so you're still filing separately. I mean, double registration is still, I guess they're still trying to look at it as seeing if you're registering between two companies that are related.
Right.
But I mean, what they've done is, I guess, eliminated the multiple registration, so it's only one registration or one ticket in the lottery now.
We talked about that. Why don't you go into what double registration is and how that's still a possibility with this new system?
So what they're looking at to see is if you're registering with one company and it's also related with another. The rules, from my understanding, have not changed about that. And correct me
Right.
if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
They're still looking to see if you're registering company A, that's also owned by the same person with company B,
Mhm.
who does basically similar projects, who's working on the same projects, right?
Right.
So that's essentially still in place. If you have a company if your company says, hey, we have another company that we can register you under, I would avoid that.
Yep.
Just to see, for, just trying to see how USCIS is going to work this season. If you have a company that says, they're not related in any way and they're not working on same projects, then you can register for more than one. It's just going to increase your odds. So
Let's talk about that, because I think what they did by tying the beneficiary's passport to it means that you don't get a better chance if you get more than one company doing it. So if a company double registers, does it matter, right? because so if a company double registers, and what we've seen and what Yesh is talking about, guys, to give some background on this, so if you're hearing this for the first time, that may be a little foreign to you. So double registrations law, man, if the same company registers for the H-1B twice, like makes a mistake, or the HR director does it and then the attorney does it, right? They will deny both the registrations because that gives them a double chance, right, of getting that. And they find that that's bad. Now, they extended that a year later after the final rule was applied to really extend what double registration was. And we've seen a lot of site investigations around this. We've seen notices of intent to revoke for approved cases. We've seen RFEs. We've seen a big push on what double registration is. And where we've talked about a couple times in the past is where it's not the same company, but they're saying they're related companies and not related in the way that the law says. And related companies are parent subsidiaries or affiliates. That means the same people or entities own the same two companies. But they're saying companies with commonalities are related, meaning that they may share an HR director, they may share an attorney, they may share an accountant, they may be in the same building. They may have had an employee, a critical employee or an owner be in this company once before and now is in another company, and they're denying those, or at least raising RFEs at a minimum on that issue. Now, if you only get one shot, what does it matter if there's a double registration, right? I mean, if you could get 5 of these kind of companies that have these commonalities and the person only gets one registration, then they've not benefited any, right? So let's hope that that's why they did it, and it takes this issue off the table, because there are a lot of companies that didn't do anything wrong under the law that may have lost visas, may have had findings of fraud against them, because that's where they're going with it, right? When immigration investigates something, the only thing they're investigating is fraud, right? They don't investigate, well, I don't like it. They have to say it's fraud. So where fraud came in was the concept that these were 2 people that conspired to give the better chance to a beneficiary to get the H-1B. And that's why it's a conspiracy to commit fraud against the United States government. Now, is that fraud? I don't know that it meets the definition of fraud as a crime, but that's what's really been happening. And people have, it's made it uncomfortable. We've seen some denials, not just, we've seen it from across a lot of people in the industry, a lot of folks complaining, a lot of discussion about that. It's been a source of frustration for staffing tech companies, I think more than others have been experiencing that pain. And we're seeing it in discussions and associations and online about that. So that's what double registration is. So hopefully, yes, that one's gone. But there are other issues, right? And Ashley, you want to weigh in on this, or any of the other attorneys? Some of the things that are probably still out there, and I'll just start the conversation, would love to get you guys to talk about it, are going to be, I think, we've seen investigations on the companies themselves more than we've ever seen. So the size of the company, the amount of employees they have, the amount of revenue, how old they are all being targets of what are called random investigations. They don't seem very random to me, but they are. So is anybody else seeing some of that, or want to talk about, what are the issues, and what are some solutions we can throw out to the people listening today about what is sufficient, what should be above a line that immigration isn't going to, deny a visa over, or shouldn't deny a visa over?
Yeah, I think with the advent of a lot more remote work, USCIS has been looking into, or Googling, I assume, offices and their square footage and the amount of H-1Bs that were filed by that company, and can those people realistically fit? Right. I don't think they're taking into consideration that a lot of these people don't always work at that office. It was probably on the LCA that they, might work remotely. So I think that is going to be something that comes up more and more as people continue to work remotely.
100%, Ashley. And the thing on the LCA is that somebody can work within the same metropolitan statistical area, and it does not require a new LCA, and it does not require an amended H-1B. So if the job is at the location of the company and these people are within commuting distance, because they go there some of the time, right? I mean, there's remote work, which is all the time remote, and then there's kind of a hybrid also, whereas there are people that will come in for meetings and then go to their apartments that are 10 miles away and do their work from there. And the space for the company might be suitable for the time-to-time meetings, but not for everybody to be there all the time. Or they might even have shifts, right? And with the reality of the world right now, if a company can spend less money on rent, and their workers want to work remotely, what's wrong with that, right? And this is an example of immigration looking at something and jumping to conclusions that that's fraudulent when there is a reasonable explanation, such as what we just described. That doesn't mean that they're not working there. Doesn't mean that somebody made it up. Doesn't mean that these employees aren't working in the specialty occupation just in the same capacity they said they would. And that's a great point you brought up, Ashley. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Attorney Ricci. She always has so much insightful information. Do you have anything to share with us?
Yeah, so the question is not just for remote workers. I have a client, for example, who has an office in Tampa, metropolitan area, and
Sure.
one in Tallahassee.
Right.
Well, that Tampa office, that person's only going there a couple of times a month, but that wage is going to be much more. So they have to pay the prevailing wage for Tampa, even though they're spending more time in Tallahassee. That's not really fair to the employer,
No.
right?
And
of course, it applies for remote work too.
It does, and what can happen is that they go over to the Tampa office, that they're only there a couple of days, and they knock on the door at 10:30 in the morning, and there's nobody there, and then you get a site investigator that is questioning your client and acting in like they've committed a crime, right? I mean, these aren't fun. I mean, you know, nobody wants the government to come to their office and knock on their door and start asking them if they're right, and take that and intensify it, that maybe you're a green card holder and you think, you know, if they say that I'm fraudulent, I lose my green card and I've been here 20 years. I mean, it's an interesting thing we're in right now, with the heightened investigations around H-1Bs, and it's happening across, you know, to lots of people. And so I see we got a couple other attorneys on there. I see Tari Rosito Van Winkle. Would you like to talk a little bit about some of this, or are you just listening in? I see some great diplomas behind you, and would love to hear some of your insights.
I'm just listening in and learning today.
Okay, fair enough. And I don't mean to
I appreciate all the information.
Yeah.
Part of my job, I need to be able to advise foreign physicians. And look at the implication of foreign physicians with the new legislation we just passed and the visa issues. So I'm just learning from you all. Thank you.
Okay. Well, no, our pleasure. And I don't mean to call you out and embarrass anybody. If anybody else has something, this is an open discussion. And look, I could talk all day on this stuff, but I don't think that's what we all want. It's fun to have a conversation about it. So if there's anybody that has any input they'd like to add on it or stuff like that, we'll go, and I'll keep coming back after that. But then if not, that's fine too, and we'll just keep talking about it.
Beautiful.
So
Jon, a question came in from YouTube. I think what they're trying to ask is what you and Attorney Ricci addressed in previous webinars about the passport situation. Can you maybe just refresh it for people that don't know about it?
The passport situation, as I assume what you're talking about, is this year's registration, as opposed to last year's registration, is tied to the beneficiary. It's not tied just to the petitioner. So last year, what was really interesting is beneficiaries, which again are the employee that wants to get the H-1B. They're called beneficiaries because the company's the petitioner. They're petitioning for an H-1B visa with permission from the United States government on behalf of the beneficiary. The driver of that registration is the petitioner. And many times the petitioner may or may not inform the beneficiary whether or not they got picked, right? They registered for a lot of people. They like this other person more than this other one, never even told them, and they weren't going to do it, right? So this year, to probably deal with the double registrations, it's going to tie to the beneficiary, and here's why. So if the beneficiary is very aggressive and doesn't know where they want to work yet and is just trying to get every chance they can to have the best job, and they go out and they get 10 different companies to petition and different petitioners to register for them. It only counts as one registration. They only get one chance to get picked, not 10 chances. Last year, 10 chances, right? So that has reduced the number of people that just get anywhere they can to have a better shot at it, to be able to, they get to equal shot. So that's what the passport is. So what are potential problems with that? Well, a potential problem with that passport is, what if that passport's lost, expired? There is a thing called a travel document. These are for people that come from countries that may not have passports. Afghanistan, they may not have gotten a passport. There's other countries out there that have those issues. But Elizabeth Ricci and I talked last week about what do you do there? And the answer is, immigration's not the most empathetic agency. When you don't have something, you don't have something. They're like, thanks for playing, you're out, right? So the question is we have seen in laws of web, right? What do you do when you don't have these documents? Are there other things you could have instead? That's probably the advice I'd give is argue discretionary. I don't have a passport. I have a birth certificate. I have this, I have that. I've got a Bible that said I was born wherever. Those are the sort of things you do when you don't have passports and other elements of immigration. But Elizabeth, you want to touch back in on that element? What do you do if you don't have a passport?
Well, I haven't had anybody not have a passport, but I did have somebody the other day who was from Venezuela with an expired passport. And I was putting the information in very carefully because I wanted to see what was going to happen. And then we went through and it said registration complete. So.
Oh, it worked. Well, fantastic. It worked. And hey, and here's the caveat. If it works once, it doesn't mean it always works in immigration. Now, conversely, that's the same. If it's denied, that doesn't mean it's going to be denied every time either, right? So there is no precedent when it comes to immigration. You can have twins that have the exact same life experience, and one get approved and one get denied.
Absolutely.
Actually had that happen once, but there you go. Okay, Pierre, any other questions coming in from the crowd? If anybody has any, please put them in the chat to Pierre, and we'll address them if we can.
I just shared one, which is, hi, currently working remotely in the US on an H-1B visa. They wrote it 1HB, but it's H-1B. And I'm considering working remotely from overseas. Is it possible, or will there be any legal issues? So
fantastic question. So going back to what is immigration? Immigration is the agency that is over the work that's being conducted geographically in the United States, right? So if you're working outside the legal boundaries of the United States, you don't need a visa, right? You may need a visa for that country, but you don't need a US visa. You don't need an H-1B visa to work remotely from another country. That's the basic law. But if you're working remotely in the US on an H-1B, you do, right? You're still in the United States. And, we've all heard this one. Well, I'm in the United States. What if I get paid overseas? Well, none of us would have a job, and that doesn't work. You're still in the United States. You're still doing work. What if I don't get paid? You know what? That's not better, because USCIS is going to look at it that you're still working. And guess what? You're undercutting an American by doing that. Free is not good. If you're still doing work, right? And what is work, right? And that is a, we've dealt with that on investigations and stuff like that. Work is a pretty low bar. Overseeing your passive investment where you've put some money in, Robinhood or one of those things into Apple, that's not work, right? People at Apple are doing the work. But opening your own company and, being the marketing director is work, right? It's not work if somebody else is doing the work and you've invested and you're passive, but that's a low bar. So be careful with that on how you structure that. And that's that's the answer to that question.
John, which makes me always wonder, why the heck do they ask on the forms what country you're doing the work in?
I have no idea.
Why isn't it default to the United States?
There should be only one answer on that.
There should be only one answer.
You can get paid for doing work in the United States from outside the United States in certain visas. We do that with P visas and O visas when we're doing agent-based petitions, and the athlete or entertainer is paid by a foreign, source. That's completely fine, right? And there's actually specific legislation on that. But yeah, great question, Elizabeth. Okay, Pierre, any more questions, or should we vary
Yeah,
into
there is
another
another
topic?
question that someone asked in the chat. Next process, question mark. We don't really understand that question if you want to elaborate on it, but I do know we passed our time, and we have a lot of attorneys that have other commitments. So I would just love to ask everyone on the call, including Attorney Ricci, Ashley, and John, for your final remarks. Anything you want to leave us with?
Okay. Yeah, you guys go. Elizabeth, why don't you go first?
I'm gonna have a big glass of wine tonight.
You're done. You're not waiting till the 25th.
Everybody, oh, I'm not logged in. I can't remember the number.
Right. You're just
This should take 15 minutes. It's taking an hour.
I need to take a page out of your book on a lot of these things. I like what told our sales folks, it's like, okay, this is a big day. We got one more chance. And everybody's like, oh, really? Yeah, no, get more. It's like, why?
Because those are going to be the ones that wait until the end of June too.
Oh, 100%. We're not chasing
Yes.
the gold mine right there, are we?
Last day, we'll always get cases going. We need to submit this.
We did 80 on the last day filing last year.
89.
89, and was running to the airport. Luckily, our airport, at FedEx at the airport, which is only 20 minutes from us, was open until 8:30. So it was 8 o'clock, and it's a 20-minute drive, and folks were running out the door with the last ones. I'm like, well, they're just gotta get in, and they're like, here are the last three, and I'm driving 100 miles an hour. It's crazy. So that's
like
where
when
online
245I expired.
Online filing hopefully comes in to help. Yeah. Okay. Yes, you spoke up. Give us your 2 cents.
I'm looking forward to registrations closing, to be honest, and I'm looking forward to seeing how many, or I guess what the percentage of getting picked is this time. Just I know registrations, when they extended it, all of a handful of our clients reached out and said, hey, we have more time. We'll get you more registrations over the weekend. So I'm hoping that they'll get them in rather sooner than later. But yeah, it's going to be a journey for this one.
Thanks, yes. And hey, and on a personal note, we're very happy, and this is a sign of the times. Yesh is getting married a week from today and has planned her marriage right between registrations and the filing of H-1Bs. And that is the story of an immigration attorney in America, if I've ever heard one. So yes, congratulations on your upcoming.
Oh yeah, we posted off thank you. We postponed the honeymoon till after the submission times, because I'm like, it's going to be so busy.
That's hilarious. All right. Thank you, Yesh. Ashley, do you have any comments on?
Yeah, as someone who's not dealing hands-on with the H-1Bs this year yet, I'm excited to see how this plays out. I hope that it goes better than it did when they rolled out the flag system. So fingers crossed for that. But I'm hopeful, but cautiously.
Right.
Optimistic.
Cautiously optimistic, I think is where we are, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just put my 2 cents. Thanks everybody for showing up. We're doing this every week, and so keep coming back. This thing is changing, right? You can even tell what we said today. Registrations changed within the last week. The online filing, what's happening, issues that are coming up will change as they go. It's a great way to learn. Tari, thanks for coming in and learning. This is what we love, and that's just what we're all about. Our whole concept at visas.ai, which is the platform of online visas, is to teach, is to learn, and to knowledge is power, and we want to spread it. And when we work together, we all do better. We're all trying to help our clients, and coming in and sharing these ideas is the least we can do. So please come back, everybody. We'll be back next week, and it'll be another game then.
And a quick plug for Attorney Ricci. You can find her by searching her name, Elizabeth Ricci. I think you like to be reached through LinkedIn. So for anyone interested in her services, and for John's services, John, you want to let everyone know where and how they can reach you?
Yeah, a couple ways. You can go to my email directly, Jon@VelieLaw. It's JON@VelieLaw.com. You can go to either of our websites, VelieLaw.com or onlinevisas.com. There's a lot of information on that. You can contact us through there. You can reach out really quickly right now for any of the lawyers through Pierre, and he'll pass that along. So if you got a question or you liked what any of us said, or you want any of us to talk to us, great. I know for our firm, we'll offer a strategy session. So just contact us, and we can jump on the phone with you and talk about your own personal facts and situations, and not have to air any of that in front of a live crowd. So we're here for you. We're glad to help, and hope everybody has a wonderful remainder of the Friday and a great weekend. We'll see you next
Excellent.
week.
Take care, everyone.